Okay, our next presentation's by Toby Stovold from Scion. He manages the Specialty Wood Products program, also seed certification program. So he's going to tell us a little bit about what's going on in the Specialty Wood Products area. So welcome, Toby.
Right, so I've got to cover a bunch of different species in 10 minutes or so. It'll be a pretty high level, and I'm happy to talk to people after it. Some of these things have been going a long time, so I want to acknowledge the people who worked at Scion that came before me, got some of these programs started. So in the part of the Specialty Wood Products Partnership that I look after, we focus on Douglas fir, a couple of eucalypts, cypresses and cypress hybrids, and I think later on this afternoon Marco will talk about the part of this program is develop new wood products, so Marco will be talking about that. And the other component, which I won't be talking about, is the drylands program, so the eucalypts that are being developed for establishment in what traditionally would be new environments, low rainfall. So just check that. So this is this partnership funded by FGR, MBIE, and there is Scion core funding aligned with this. So why the investment in these areas? Traditionally, 90%, a large percentage of the estate is radiata. So for having some other species is a risk mitigation. We have some growers whose sites just isn't really suitable for radiata, so once you get altitude and snow risk, there are growers that prefer Douglas fir. And we also have a group of growers that are growing effectively chip. So again, they use some radiata chip, but there's two that use eucalypt chip, so we're supporting them. For specialty timbers, cypresses are popular, so we've had a long experience of breeding cypresses and hybrids, so I'll cover a bit of that. And the good news is, through various relationships with people like Proseed, Earnslaw One, and Southwood Export, if you were looking to plant these kind of species, then there is good quality genetic seed available through these relationships. So I'll start with Douglas fir. Now Douglas fir is a bit of a tricky one for us. The cones don't persist. It's not a frequent coner. Brent was up here before. He's got radiata, which is, cones every year. The cones hang around. So we've ended up with basically mixed generations. We make some plus trees, we graft them up. We can't get cones. We have to wait for the orchard to flower. So it's not really that straightforward to deal with. So I can't. We're probably approaching the third generation, but like I say, all the trials have mixed content just because it's a different biological system. So some of the things that are going on, Brent, he took his prop. So through relationships with Douglas fir breeders overseas, we also have access to a snip chip, and we've started the process of sampling in our trials, and our objective is to use that SNP data to look at primarily stiffness and Swiss needle cast. So we've done 2,000 trees in 2 different trials, one in the North Island, one in the South Island, and my colleague Yaroslav, who's not here, he has estimated genomic breeding values for wood stiffness and needle cast, and the next thing we're going to do is take those predictions to the seed orchard material, which hasn't yet been tested, and try and make predictions of what their stiffness or what their children's stiffness and Swiss needle cast might be. So that's a project for this year. Previously not aligned to this program, Earnslaw One was running their own set of selections and testing, and in this program that was brought in to be measured. So we had some students from Oregon State come out, and we've measured the trials put in by Earnslaw, and we've got breeding values for those now as well. As I said, we don't have the luxury of having cones all the time. So in 2017, Earnslaw said they had a whole bunch of seed orchard progeny they'd like to test, and ProSeed also had some that hadn't been tested. So we embarked on another round of progeny testing. We had a few nursery issues, so it ended up going over 2 financial years. Luckily, the collaborators were able to provide pretty similar sites, so that we ended up in Kaingaroa, Castle Downs and Rankleburn. So that's new testing for future new parents. So we'll move into the eucalyptus. Eucalyptus regnans, the last round of, we started in 1979. The last round of progeny tests went in the ground in 2009 and 2010. We've measured these. New selections have been grafted up to ProSeed's orchards, so you can get some really good regnan seed. It's not really flavour of the month. A lot of this work was focused at the pulp side of things. I know you can saw it. So we will, as a backup to the ProSeed stuff, we will thin this, one of these stands, in collaboration with Timberlands, and it potentially will be a future seed resource if we need it. And we'll get some productivity numbers out of it as well. One of the things that we were able to do, the previous generation, the trial got a really nasty dose of Barren Road syndrome, if you know what that is. It's a mix of nasties that turn up and make regnans look really, really sick. So these selections that drove this trial looked really healthy in a trial that had a lot of health issues. So we haven't seen, in the assessments, we haven't seen much Barren Road syndrome. So we're hoping we've sort of covered that off a bit. Fastigata, again, started in the late 70s. We're currently in the 3rd generation. This one's a bit bigger, so we've had to split the population into 2. It's called a rolling front. So we're halfway through measuring it. So the first half of the rolling front, we've done both of those trials. We're looking to do the remaining 2 trials this year. This one we haven't yet made new selections, so we haven't got any new stuff into the seed orchards yet, but logically we would. And again, at the same site, we've got the regnans and the fastigata sitting together. The plan is to thin that and convert it to a seed stand and get productivity information from the thinning. That will happen this year. night ends. So this is the one that we probably do the most work on, because there's two people actually actively planting it, Southwood Exports and Kinleith. So similarly, it's big enough we had to split it into two goes to manage it. We've finished measuring this about 5 years ago, and we embarked on a wood property study in one of the rolling fronts. So with the help of Southwood Exports, we organised to fell about 780 trees. They're all put into different lengths. We recovered breast height discs, 3 metre discs, 6 metre discs. We did growth strain on the bolt between breast height and 3 metres. And as a result of that, we were able to provide breeding values for shrinkage and growth strain, and we had growth and volume. And Southwood took the opportunity to develop. They've got 2 orchards. They've got a fast-growing one where density hasn't changed, so we've kept density at the same level as the previous generation, but we've improved growth. And then they put in another one where they improved density but held growth the same. So effectively, this one is fourth generation, sitting there ready to go. Those new orchards are there. I think Proceed has also grafted the same material. And we'll use the disc spot. We've got some retained discs, and what we're hoping to do is use NIR to make a model that we can predict the shrinkage and growth strain without having to cut the trees down. It was a massive project at the time, and we still need further funding just to finish that off. So the next interesting thing we did with night ends, propsis is a problem, and in anticipation of this, we got pretty much the whole population planted out as a trial in Southland, and crossed our fingers that propsis would turn up. And like people have said about health trials before, never happens. So with the cooperation of Southwood Export, we've put a project together where Tony Withers, who's not here, sent out some of her team, and they collected just over 2,500 propsis beetles from Poronui Station. They sexed them all, put them into little pairs and little jars, and sent them off to this Howdens block that Southwood owns, and Southwood staff did 2 releases per plot, and then they started to watch it. So there's this crown damage index score that they use, and I don't know if you can see it, but this guy's missing quite a lot of his top section, and this guy next door isn't. Now there is a bit of chewing on this one if you're close enough. So the Southwood people did monthly assessments and sent it up to Tony, and it wasn't looking very good, but after the April assessment seemed to be enough data to send the boys down. So they went down in May, and that's what we found. We used a 1 to 10 score. So 1 would be we didn't see much, 10 would be the witch's broom, where there's no actual top left, just sticks. I was down there when the guys were doing it, and they didn't give it much hope. We got it analysed heritably at 0.15, so it's low, but it's sort of similar to diameter for a lot of species, so can do something with that. There's a few genetic groups, there's some differences, but the important bit is down in this part of the graph, you are growing faster and not getting chewed, so there is scope to do some breeding there. The trial won't be assessed, so it won't be sprayed, so we'll get another crack at it in summer, hopefully. So quickly onto cypresses. Macrocarpa, it's been off the books for a while. We made some selections in a tolerant stand that had tolerant trees. 3, they went off to the orchard. We got seed back from ProSeed after about 8 years. 3 new trials went out. So Timberlands took a trial. Landcorp, one of our new collaborators, took a trial, and can't remember where the other one went. Quickly, Loose Tanaka, same thing. Last set of trials, 2017, Tarawera Kaingaroa, Pipawai, and that's just turning that generation over so that we will get new seed. And lastly, hybrids. A lot of people are interested in cypress hybrids as an alternative to radiata, so you can have a different sworn product. We had a good relationship with the breeders in British Columbia. They sent us Nucatensis pollen. We made several hundred new hybrids in the early 2000s, late 2000s, sorry. We looked at the ones we liked. We put them through 2 propagation cycles because rooting is important. And we've released 6 new Avenzii types and 6 new Leyland types, and I think the farm forestry guys have taken up some of those plants to put them out in more plots, but we put 2 of these trials out, one on a private property in Masterton, which is where the other Macrocarpa went, and one on a Landcorp property at Te Anau. So that's probably me. And yeah, I'd just like to, like the other speakers, thank all of the forest companies and growers who have hosted these trials over the years so we can keep going, because I did struggle to get Macrocarpa sites because people are going, why are you planting that? But I think we will get improved canker tolerance. Thank you.